everything you've always wanted to know about the best companies to work for list. Before we dive into this webinar, a few notes of housekeeping. First off, you're invited to ask a question anytime during this webinar, and we'll make a point of getting back to you, hopefully during the webinar. The Ask a Question window is just above the chat window, so look in your GoToWebinar navigation for the question section to enter your question. Secondly, you will receive a copy of this recording along with the slides and responses to your questions after the presentation. So we have your email address, and we'll make sure that you get a copy of all of those items. I'm Ingrid Stabb, AVP of Marketing at Great Place to Work, and it's my pleasure to introduce to you our speaker today, Erin Bartulski. Erin Bartulski serves as the Best Companies Director at Great Place to Work. In her role, she is responsible for managing the Fortune 100 Best Companies to Work For list and the 50 Best Small and Medium Workplaces list. Erin works closely with Fortune magazine and with all areas of Great Place to Work to build systems and processes that ensure list participants have a great experience with the application process. Erin started with Great Place to Work in 2000 and has worn many hats since she first started, working with clients on the design, implementation, and analysis of their employee surveys, to managing hundreds of companies through the Best Companies process. She has always had a passion for our mission in helping companies transform their workplaces. And without further ado, I will turn this over to Erin.
Great. Thank you, Ingrid, for that warm introduction. And thank you, everybody, for joining us today. You're here to learn about what it takes to participate in the U.S. Best Companies to Work For list. But first, I just thought I would start by telling you that at Great Place to Work, we produce many lists around the world. We produce more than 90 lists in 46 countries around the world, including all of these different countries that you see on this list today. But here today, we're here to talk about two very important lists that we produce in the United States. Great Place to Work's 100 Best Companies to Work For list, as well as the Best Small and Medium Workplaces list. For the Fortune 100 Best Companies to Work For list that you see over on the left, that recognizes companies that have been in business for more than 5 years and have more than 1,000 employees. Our Best Small and Medium Workplaces list recognizes companies that have been in business for 2 years and have 999 employees or less. About today's session, I'm going to walk you through how participation in our list process works, focusing on our unique methodology. Next, I'll explore what participants get out of participating, both literally and figuratively. And then we'll begin to explore some trends and shifts that are making the present time the best time for you to participate in the U.S. Best Companies to Work For list. And finally, I'll finish up with a few minutes of guidance on how to put your best foot forward in your application, namely through the culture audit. And finally, we'll conclude today's session with 20 minutes of Q&A. But as Ingrid mentioned before, please feel free to provide or ask any questions that you have in the questions box on the GoToMeeting. But first, I always like to start out with a poll. So I'd like to know, of those of you that are on today's webinar, how many of you have applied to the Great Place to Work Best Companies list in the past? In just a moment, you'll see a short poll, and you can just provide your responses to this question. All right, the poll is up. So if you can, just please respond to this quick poll so we can get a sense of who all is new and who has been through this before. We'll give it just a moment. All right. And it looks like 66% of you have not participated in the Best Companies to Work For list in the past, and about 34% of you have. So for those of you that haven't participated, hopefully you'll find some valuable information in today's session. And for those of you that have participated in the past, hopefully this serves as a valuable reminder of what's entailed with the list process. Great. So let's go ahead and get started. So we're going to talk to you about how it works. So a big part of our list process is understanding the philosophy that goes into producing the list. At Great Place to Work, we hold a few core beliefs about what a list should entail. In our opinion, lists should have a validated methodology, and we've tested our methodology for over 20 years in more than 40 countries around the world. It should also utilize current, reliable, and verifiable information, and our list is rigorously fact-checked by both Great Place to Work as well as the editors at Fortune before being published. We also require that participants who survey their employees each and every year, which actually brings us to the next belief, that our list should reflect the voice of a representative sample of the employee population. Anyone can have an opinion of your workplace, but we make certain that the opinions that are represented on our list are from current employees and not past employees. This means that any job seeker who relies on our list when selecting a workplace through Fortune magazine can be fairly confident that they're getting an accurate picture of the company's culture from our materials. And finally, we believe that our list should speak honestly but positively about what makes a great workplace great. We're committed to positive recognition, which is why you'll never see us produce a list of the 10 worst companies to work for. When we evaluate your company for our best companies list, we're taking into account both how your employees experience the workplace and the unique practices, programs, and benefits that you have in place to sustain a really unique workplace culture. Many lists just look at one of these aspects or the other, and some lists don't look at either of those. Our survey of millions of employees each year verifies our definition of a great workplace as one where employees trust the people that they work for. They have pride in what they do, and they enjoy the people that they work with. That definition has become the centerpiece of the Great Place to Work model. The majority of our assessment of a company's workplace culture measures the levels of trust that exist between employees and management, and also considers the level of camaraderie among employees and the pride employees experience in their roles and how their company is perceived within the community. Great Place to Work has developed an instrument that enables us to measure the levels of organizational trust. The Trust Index Employee Survey consists of 58 standard statements, 6 demographic questions, and 2 open-ended questions that we ask on the survey. And for those of you that are looking for a more complete survey solution, options for customizing your survey to add additional statements and additional demographics are available to you for an additional fee. Let's take a quick look at the factors we measure through the Trust Index Survey. So the Trust Index Survey, when we talk about credibility, we're talking about communication, competence, and integrity. With communication, we're wanting to understand, can employees ask management any reasonable question and get a straight answer? Is management competent? Does management have a clear view of where the organization is going and how to get there? And finally, when we talk about credibility, we're talking about integrity. So does management deliver on its promises that it makes to employees? Our second dimension that we measure is respect. So when we talk about respect, we're talking about support, collaboration, and caring. When we say support, we're talking about, does management recognize honest mistakes as part of doing business? Is management collaborative? Do they genuinely seek and respond to suggestions and ideas that employees have? And are they caring? Does management show a sincere interest in me as a person and not just an employee or a number? Next, our Trust Index survey also measures the levels of fairness within the organization. So we're looking at equity, impartiality, and justice. And again, when we talk about equity, we're talking about, do employees feel that they receive a fair share of the profits made by this organization? Is there impartiality? So do promotions go to those who best deserve them versus favorites? And justice. If an employee feels that they're unfairly treated, do they believe that they'll be given a fair shake if they appeal? Credibility, respect, and fairness all comprise the trust component of the Great Place to Work survey. And as we mentioned before, there's another piece of the Trust Index of the Great Place to Work model, and that's around pride. So when we talk about pride, we're talking about the personal pride that people feel, team pride, and company. So personal, do employees feel that they make a difference within their workplace? And team pride, are people really willing to give extra to get the job done on a daily basis? And company, do people enjoy coming to work here? Do they look forward to coming to work here each and every day? And finally, the last dimension that we measure as part of the Great Place to Work Trust Index Employee Survey is camaraderie. So intimacy, hospitality, community. With intimacy, do employees feel that they can be themselves around the workplace? Hospitality, is this a friendly or fun place for employees to work? And community, is there a sense of family or team feeling within this organization? So credibility, respect, fairness, pride, and camaraderie are the 5 dimensions that we look at when we're measuring a great workplace from the employee's perspective. And as I mentioned before, the Trust Index Employee Survey also has 6 standard demographics that we ask on the survey. So we ask type of job. So is the employee in a production type of role or a managerial type of role? We ask about sex. So are they male or female? We ask their age, years of service or tenure within the organization, their racial ethnic identity, and their work status. And again, there is an opportunity for you to customize your survey to really hone in on additional demographic groups such as department or location to really help you understand the unique things that are happening within your own workplace. And for us, we use these demographic trends, or we use these demographics to help us understand just general trends within each individual workplace, but also trends that we're seeing at a macro level. So trends that we're seeing across all companies that are participating in our Best Companies to Work For competition. And finally, the survey finishes with 2 open-ended questions that are also evaluated as part of our list process. So is there anything unique or unusual about this company that makes it a great place to work? And we ask for employees to provide very specific examples. We also ask employees to provide their open-ended responses to the question, if you could change one thing about this company to make it a better place to work, what would it be? And let me just tell you, employees will always provide more than one thing about the company that would make it a great place to work. So next we move to the second half of our evaluation equation, and that's helping us to understand the company's workplace culture. And by culture, we're referring to a set of explicit behaviors, beliefs, and values that define an organization's identity. All companies participating in our Best Companies to Work For list complete the Culture Audit questionnaire, which examines details about your company's demographics and benefits programs as well as their usage, and then also collects your open-ended responses about your practices and programs in 9 key areas, which we'll get to in just a moment. So when people think about workplace culture and workplaces that win a spot on our list, most people envision things like this. Fun and games like a in-office Wii, wacky office designs like slides and hammocks, massages in the office, awesome athletic facilities, free cafeterias, rock climbing walls, and much more. Certainly all these items play a role in making a great work environment, but that's really only the icing on the cake when it comes to what we're studying. The quality that we focus on is the extent to which these behaviors and practices are gift-like versus the extent to which they are transactional. For better or for worse, every company has benefits, means of communicating, the presence or lack of training and development programs. But what we found is that the quality with which they're offered is often what distinguishes merely the checklist of programs one would expect at a workplace from an outstanding, optimal, dynamic workplace culture. So when we talk about the 9 practice areas that when we evaluate companies, we're looking at these practices and behaviors within these 9 key areas. So when we talk about inspiring, on one end of the spectrum, a transaction type of inspiring practice would be really just informing people about the organization's goals. Gift work, or gift-like, on the other hand, would help people really understand how their work, their daily work, relates to the company's higher purpose as well as the overall corporate success. When we talk about speaking, again, on one side of on the transaction side of the spectrum, information is shared to employees just on a need-to-know basis. Within a gift work type of culture, companies share information fully and frequently and in various ways, and leaders provide news personally to encourage a culture of transparency within the workplace. When we talk about listening, transactional type of listening practices would include responding to employees' questions when relevant to the company's overall goals. In a gift work type of environment, leaders make themselves accessible in a variety of ways to encourage people to ask questions, express concerns, make comments, or even offer criticisms of their workplace. Thanking, on one end of the spectrum, it's really acknowledging employees for loyalty to the organization. And in a gift-like culture, it's cultivating a climate of appreciation by sincerely recognizing good work and extra effort frequently and in unexpected ways that are unique to your workplace culture. When we talk about developing, on one side of the spectrum, on a transactional type of perspective, we're talking about you provide people with employees and training in skills needed to do their jobs. In a gift-like type of environment, you're really fostering a learning environment where employees can discover and nurture their unique talents and their interests. And caring. When we talk about caring, we're talking on one spectrum, on the transaction-like spectrum, we're talking about providing competitive benefits for work-family issues within the employees' lives. In a gift-like environment, we're talking about distinctive practices and programs that respond to employees' needs to balance their work with their personal lives and their family obligations. When we talk about hiring, in a transaction-like type of workplace culture, we're looking for the right people to do the right job. And in a gift-like type of work environment, we're looking at people with gifts and talents who can grow with the organization and stay at the organization for a long time. When we talk about celebrating, on one end, it's holding periodic social gatherings for employees to celebrate successes. And in a gift-like type of environment, it's encouraging an atmosphere of fun and camaraderie with unique and special events that really bear the mark of your workplace culture. And finally, when we talk about sharing, in a transaction-like type of organization, people provide competitive wages, salaries, and bonus packages. But in a truly great place to work, one that experiences a gift-like type of workplace, we're talking about sharing the fruits of people's mutual efforts generously and fairly across the organization. So those are the 9 practice areas that we look at when we're examining the culture audit submission. And of course, we need to have a criteria and to create a methodology to help us organize and score your responses and to help us actually create an actual list. And for this reason, we've created BOHI. So BOHI stands for variety, originality, all-inclusiveness, human touch, and integration. When we talk about variety, we're talking about the breadth of programs and policies and methods for implementation within your workplace, within each of these practice areas that we just discussed. Originality, we're talking about the programs and policies and practices that are unique to your organization and creative while also bearing the mark of your company. And they can't be replicated in other workplaces. All-inclusiveness, we're talking about the programs and policies and practices and making sure that they're for everyone within your organization and not just certain employees within a certain location or within headquarters. Human touch, we're measuring the levels of that sense of appreciation, generosity, and warmth that's in the programs and policies that you're offering your employees, again, within each of those 9 practice areas. And finally, integration. So we want to see how all of your programs and policies are linked by a central theme, an overarching framework in which these programs are delivered. So BOHI is the scoring criteria that we use for each of when we measure each of the 9 practice areas that you've provided to us. Now, the culture audit is the most mysterious part of the list process, and many of you have requested tips to help you complete it. So here's a cheat sheet and a quick run-through on some sample responses to these questions. So this is good versus great. Good answers would provide a list of the programs and practices that your company offers. You'd speak generically about these programs and policies, offer very few or no examples of these policies and programs that you offer, and omit the how and the focus on the what. A great answer would also provide a list of the programs and practices that you offer, but they would illustrate their unique spin on the practice, bearing the mark of your unique culture. We'd love to hear examples or stories of the practice in action, including stories from your employees. and they reflect an overarching cultural theme within your workplace. So let's go through some examples. So in the culture audit question in speaking, we ask you to provide your response to the question, what are the distinctive ways in which managers, especially senior managers, share information with employees and foster a culture of transparency? So a good answer would be that management speaks with our employees through the practices like town hall meetings, site visits from executives, regular email communications, including a monthly newsletter, an anonymous suggestion box, and a new in-house social media network. We have an open door policy, and employees are told that they can speak to any management team member at any time. That's a pretty good answer. But a great answer would be, this past year, we needed to communicate a restructuring. Our CEO hosted a town hall meeting that was live broadcast to our remote locations. Department managers held follow-up meetings with their teams, and managers were equipped with responses to frequently asked questions. Employees could submit questions anonymously to leadership, and our CEO responded to each one in a series of videos emailed to employees and shared on the intranet the following week. That's a great answer. Let's talk about another example that we have in the culture audit question around recognizing. So the question states, how does your company show appreciation and or recognition for employees' good work and extra effort or other achievements? So again, a good answer. We celebrate employee service anniversaries in 5-year increments. Each employee achieving this milestone receives a substantial gift, which they select from our service award program catalog. The item is mailed to the employees' homes on their service anniversary, along with a certificate signed by our CEO. Again, it's a good answer. But a great answer would be, we celebrate employee service anniversaries in 5-year increments. Each employee achieving this milestone receives a substantial gift, which they select from our service award program catalog. Employees' gifts are mailed to their homes on their service anniversaries, along with a personalized letter of thanks from the CEO. Service anniversaries are also celebrated with a posting on our intranet, and colleagues often send notes of thanks and congratulations. At our quarterly all-hands meeting, all those celebrating service anniversaries are brought on stage for a group photo and a round of applause from our colleagues. That's a great answer. And I hope by providing these couple of examples, you can see the difference that what we're looking for when we're looking for a good versus a great answer, and also when we're looking at a gift-like versus a transaction-like type of policy and practice. So adding it all up. Great Place to Work's list methodology actually places a heavier emphasis on what your employees are thinking about your company. 2/3 of your total score come from the results of the statements and the open-ended questions on the Trust Index survey. The remaining third come from our BOHI scores of your workplace culture in each of those 9 different practice areas. And here's something that you should know. Do not underestimate the relationship between these 2 entities. Your employees can have an outstanding workplace experience, but if you do not take the time to tell your story well, chances are your culture will not rate high enough to make the list. Similarly, no matter how much time or resources you spend on your culture audit, if that culture is not authentically experienced by your employees and reflected in their survey scores on the Trust Index survey, similarly, you are not likely to make the list. Being a best company to work for requires the dynamic interplay of these 2 different but related sides of the coin. So again, to wrap up, 2/3 of your company's overall score come from the Trust Index. The remaining 1/3 come from the culture audit. So now let's turn our attention to what you get out of the Great Place to Work evaluation. Let's start with the literal. So every company that participates in the Best Companies to Work For competition receives high-level insights from Great Place to Work on the levels of trust, including credibility, respect, and fairness, as well as pride and camaraderie. Along with that, we also include how your employees responded to the final question that we asked on our survey. Taking everything into account, this is a great place to work. These results from the Trust Index survey, the summary report, will enable you to get a baseline read on employee morale within your organization, track how you're performing year over year against these metrics, and identify areas where greater focus may be needed to invigorate your workplace culture. And for those of you that are looking to get a little bit deeper and really understand how you performed on the Trust Index survey, there are a number of additional reporting options for you. The Best Companies List participation and the Trust Index Scores report are one of the most accessible employee survey assessment tools on the market currently. These results allow you to identify your best and your worst performance on each of the individual survey statements that we ask, hone in on specific opportunities for improvement, select specific focus areas for you to improve upon, and finally provide a benchmark for you to compare your scores with against the very best companies to work for within your size category. Another one of our custom report options enables you to compare your survey scores with that of the best companies from your size category, industry, geographic region, and much, much more, depending on how you want to slice the data. These reports can be a powerful tool for you to help you understand how you rate against your competition. And finally, Great Place to Work's Trust Index survey is the gateway to all of our other products and services that we offer at Great Place to Work. Once you've completed the Trust Index baseline assessment, there's an abundance of ways that you can work with Great Place to Work to better understand your workplace culture and how to develop the culture that will create your optimal performance within your workplace. You can read about these options on our website, or you can also speak with somebody on our client solutions team to address any questions that you have about the services that we can provide to you after you've completed your survey process. All right, and next we're going to talk about why you should do it. So it's thriving in an increasingly complicated landscape. But first, I want to start with another poll. So you'll see a poll come up shortly, and if you were to register for the Best Companies to Work For list competition, what would be your primary motivation for participating? So please provide your response by clicking on one of the 5 options available to you. So A, enhance your perceptions of your employer brand. B, attract and retain top talent. C, obtain local and national media recognition. D, conduct a free employee assessment survey. And E, benchmark your workplace against the very best. So take a minute to go ahead and respond to those. Seeing some responses coming in. All right, and it looks like the polls are in. So 42% of you would register, your motivation for registering would be to attract and retain top talent. 31% of you are interested in participating so that you can benchmark your workplace against the very best. And finally, 20% of you would be interested in participating to enhance your perceptions of your overall employer brand. Following that, 6% are interested in obtaining the local and national media recognition that comes with participating in the list. And 1% of you is interested in conducting the free employee survey assessment that comes along with the list participation process. So thank you for responding to that poll. All right, so certainly earning a spot on the list is the ultimate positive outcome for companies that are participating in the Best Companies to Work For. Unfortunately, only a lucky number 150 companies will be noted in Fortune magazine. And even in an era with proliferating lists, our list with Fortune remain the gold standard. The 100 Best Franchise, which means the print publication, and all of the corresponding online content together comprise Fortune's most popular feature in the year, surpassing even the Fortune 500 in readership. And many of our clients report that completing the culture audit is an exercise that really helps their business. Here's one testimonial celebrating that the culture audit helps them to better understand what a great workplace is and where to focus their efforts to achieve continuous improvement. So for this one particular company, the very process of considering the questions that are asked in Culture Audit Part 2 of the Culture Audit help us understand what a great place to work is and where we can and should focus our efforts to continue to improve. We know that we have already created a great place to work, and regardless of whether we rise in the rankings, it's instructive to think about what we can do better in light of the questions asked in these essays and our core value of continuous improvement. And this next testimonial, this is actually from a company that didn't make this year's list, but they still find value in participating each and every year. So the process is thorough, and you'll learn a ton about your company and your culture just as you prepare the application. When you submit it, the feedback will be a great way to learn no matter what the outcome is. For us, that's pretty exciting, and we hope that you're excited about the opportunity to apply as well. Next, we're going to provide you with a business case that you could take back to your CEO or to those that would be responsible for determining whether or not you can participate, whether or not you decide to participate in this year's list. So in a recent report by Deloitte's Burson Group, we came across these findings about the changing nature of talent acquisition. And if I can just leave you with 3 main points from the study, they are that 1, hiring is expensive. I'm sure most of you on today's phone line know that. And today, everybody is looking for a job, even if they don't know that they're looking for a job. So social technologies have really enabled the passive job seeker. And that talent acquisition strategy should rely on authentically communicating your employer brand as determined by your actual and current employees. So Great Place to Work lists can really help you manage your employer brand and are essential to your new talent acquisition strategies. And similarly, we see more and more studies affirming what Great Place to Work has known for years, that being a great workplace has measurable business results. Any action you could take to better understand the levels of trust, or better yet, build trust, will ultimately enhance your overall performance and your bottom line. The graphic on the left is from a 2013 report from Interaction Associates, Building Trust, which found that, in short, companies adept at practices that reinforce strong leadership, trust, and collaboration enjoy better financial performance. I mean, just look at that gap between trust in high-performing and low-performing organizations. And this is really what Great Place to Work has been saying for the past 18 years through the financial analysis that we conduct in conjunction with the Russell Investment Group each and every year. And that study on the right, we're looking at the publicly traded companies that are on the 100 Best list, and that the best companies to work for outperform standard market indices by a factor of 2, and depending on the economy, up to 3. So those companies that are publicly traded have more than double the stock performance of those within the Russell 3000 or even the S&P 500. And finally, the researchers are really following suit. Just check out some of these recent statements from behavior research conducted by a team at Harvard University and the Massachusetts General Hospital that set out to identify the factors that most likely impact the 21st century employee well-being, commitment, and productivity. The research was led by Nancy Etkoff and affirmed that trust and the sense of purpose enable greater commitment and productivity for employees. And our process of the Best Companies to Work For application will help you get a baseline read on the levels of trust in your organization, and this is too important for you to be ignoring today. And if your CEO doesn't already care about trust, he or she soon will. PwC's 16th Annual Global CEO Survey dealing with disruption surveyed more than 1,300 CEOs in 68 countries and found that trust is top of mind for today's CEOs. Our lists and our assessments are a positive move toward transparent work environment. And here's even more research from Great Place to Work demonstrating the impact of being a great workplace on turnover. In the 7 primary industries that make up the list, turnover at great workplaces is greater than half that of industry norms. So this study, we look at the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and we do comparisons with the industries that we measure within our best companies to work for list and compare those with the industries of the BLS, of the Bureau of Labor Statistics. So each and every year this holds true, that there is significantly lower turnover within the best companies than there are within their industry peers. And finally, the nitty-gritty details. Here's really why you should do it. There is absolutely no risk with participating. No one will know but you, and regardless of whether or not your company makes the list, our commitment to positive recognition will help you showcase your workplace unique strengths. It's totally free, and it always has been. This isn't a game that you pay to play, and this is very important. And it's really easy to get started now. If your company has participated in the past, even in the past 2 years, it's even easier. We're now able to pre-populate most of the data that you've provided within the past years, making participation faster and easier than ever before. So it's really simple to get started. So we encourage you to apply today by visiting our website, which you will receive a link to how to apply. But basically, you go to our website and you click on the Get Started link. Once there, you'll need to set up a user account, which will enable you to get access to the registration form. This registration form asks questions about who the contacts are within your organization and some basic eligibility questions to help us understand who your company is. And we also ask you to review the terms of participation so that you understand how your data will be used, understand our confidentiality agreement that we have with companies that are participating in the list, and our approach to positive recognition within this application process. So please make note of a couple of upcoming deadlines. For companies with more than 1,000 employees that have been in business for 5 or more years, you would be participating in the Fortune 100 Best Companies to Work For list. And the deadline to apply is July 31st. But of course, the earlier you register, the more time you have to complete your trust index, and the more flexibility you have to select your 2-week survey window for the Trust Index survey. So again, the deadline to register for the Fortune 100 Best Companies to Work For list is July 31st. The last day that you can start your Trust Index 2-week survey window is August 31st, and your culture audit is due on August 14th of 2015. And for companies that have between 25 and 999 employees that have been in business for 2 or more years, there's just a few more weeks left remaining to put your hat in the ring. You must register by April 17th in order to participate, and you will have access to the culture audit as soon as you register for the survey process. The last date to survey your employees during that 2-week survey window is April 24th, and the culture audit is due to us on Friday, May 15th. So thank you very much. We encourage you again to apply and by visiting our website, which is www.greatplacetowork.com/apply, or you can email us or call us if you have any questions or concerns about this year's application process. And again, thank you very much. We're going to pass it over to Ingrid to open up the Q&A session of today's meeting.
Yes, thanks, Erin. That was really thorough, and I'd like to thank everybody on the call because you have really been engaged in this webinar and submitted tons of good questions. So we are going to attempt to answer every one of your questions. So hang on to this webinar with us. Keep submitting them in the question window, and we'll go through these. So first off, Erin, one question we're receiving quite a bit is, do I have to survey all of my employees?
That's a great question, and it really depends on the number of employees you have within your workplace. If you have less than 1,000 employees and you'd be participating in our small and medium workplaces list, yes, you would be surveying all of your employees. And we do that so that we can ensure that your company meets our required response rate and the required confidence level that we're looking to achieve. So for those companies, again, with 999 employees or less, you would be surveying all of your employees. For companies that have more than 1,000 employees, we take a representative sample of your employee population and survey those employees. For those companies that have around 1,000 employees, it might be that we would survey all of your employees, but it really does depend on your unique circumstances. But we do measure, or we are hoping to achieve a 95% confidence level in the data that we receive back. So we provide you with enough survey response or enough of a sample size so that we can expect to receive that, expect that you would receive that response rate / confidence level.
Great, thanks, Erin. And just to clarify, I think you might have accidentally said 999 and above, but you meant 999 and below. Do you mind stating that one more time, just so everyone?
Yes, I'm sorry about that. Yes, so so if you have less than 999 employees or less, you would be surveying your entire population. If you have more than 999 or more than 1,000 employees, you would be surveying a random sample.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, another question we received is, what makes this list better or different from other lists? And they gave examples like the Forbes list, SHRM, Entrepreneur Magazine, Glassdoor. So how does this list compare?
I think first and foremost, the thing that makes our list methodology very distinct and different from Glassdoor, for example, is that we are surveying current employees. So we can tell you currently get a pulse on your workplace. Whereas with Glassdoor, they're looking at any employee that has ever worked for their organization. Their methodology is slightly different than ours in that we are surveying only current employees that work for that company.
Okay, great. And what about the other ones like Forbes, SHRM, Entrepreneur?
The Entrepreneurs survey, actually we used to conduct that survey for them several years ago, about 2 or 3 years ago. So we are no longer producing that list, and honestly I'm not quite sure what's entailed with that list, but we did 2 years ago we did run that list for them, and now since then we have now published the best small and medium workplaces list in Fortune magazine instead of Entrepreneur. And with the Forbes list, Forbes actually is relying on Glassdoor's data. So when we talked about, when I spoke a minute ago about the fact that anybody can respond to a Glassdoor survey about a particular workplace, our list is differentiated by the fact that we are only surveying current employees that are active employees within that workplace. I hope that helps.
Okay, great. Yeah, we get so many questions about copies of this presentation and recording of this webinar, and yes, we will be providing that. So let's keep going on the questions, and at the end, I'll do a wrap-up with everybody about some of the housekeeping again and how you can get copies of all this. But continuing down on the questions, another one people would love to hear again. I know you went through this, but just to review it so everybody's really clear, could you review again the cost to apply, the deadlines, and you did mention the employee size, but go ahead and repeat again. So let's do one at a time. So first off, cost to apply.
Sure. So as I mentioned before, there is no cost to apply for the list participation process. It's completely free. So all you need to do is register and sign up and survey your employees. We cover the cost of all the survey administration fees. The only cost, I would say, is a soft cost, which is your time in completing the culture audit, as well as preparing for the Trust Index survey deployment. So, but the hard costs, there are no hard costs. It's completely free to participate.
Okay, great. And then could you review the deadlines again?
Sure. So I'll just put these back up on our screen today. So the deadline to participate in the Fortune 100 Best Companies to Work For, the deadline just to submit your name in the hat, in the ring, is July 31st, 2015. The last day to start the 2-week Trust Index employee survey is August 31st. But I should specify that you can select any 2-week survey window that you want up until August 31st. So if you wanted to start surveying your employees on April 27th through May 11th, you could choose that survey window, or really any survey window that fits your needs. And the culture audit for the 100 Best Companies to Work For list is due to us on August 14th. Now, for the small and medium list, as I mentioned before, time is running out, unfortunately. We have the deadline to register is in just a couple of weeks on April 17th, on Friday, April 17th. And the last day that you can actually start your 2-week survey window would be April 24th. But again, if you register and you say you want to survey on the 13th or on the 14th and pick a 2-week survey window from then, you are welcome to do so. And then finally, the culture audit is due to us on May 15th, 2015. The small and medium list is actually published. It will be published this year in October. And our Fortune 100 Best Companies to Work For list will be published in early 2016, likely around the March timeframe like it was this year.
Okay, great. I'll answer that last question there about employee side. So as Erin mentioned, if your company has 999 employees or below, then you are a candidate for the best small and medium workplaces. And if you're 1,000 and above, you're a candidate for the Fortune 100 Best Companies to Work For list. And both lists are published in Fortune magazine. Okay, next question. This is another common one. Is there an average page length for the culture audit, and what is too short and what is too long?
That's a great question, and it really is going to depend on the company. We don't provide word counts or limits on word counts or the number of pages that you provide to us. What we're looking for is really succinct and well-written documentation on how your workplace operates. So as long as you can, if you can put all of that into a 3-page document and it works and it's really succinct, then that's great. A lot of companies do spend a lot of time and energy focused on the look and feel of how the culture audit submission is, but really that's not something that we care about. And in fact, when you get into the system, we remove all options basically for you to format the pages in a certain way so that it looks slick. We really want companies to just provide us with the content. It's the quality of the content, not the quantity. So I can't really provide a specific page number or page count for you, but just know that based on the examples that we shared with you before and what the types of practices and policies that we're looking at, that should help guide you in terms of the number of pages that you should provide. And again, as many examples that you can provide is really helpful for us and our evaluation team. So it really helps us to understand who your company is. And also, you are free to provide us with supplemental materials, which I apologize, I didn't mention this before, but we encourage companies to provide us with any kind of supplemental materials that will help us understand your specific policy or practice. So links to videos are helpful for us. Handbooks or documentation that you've provided to your employees is really useful. Though we do try to limit it to just digital documentation. We're trying to be a little eco-friendly around here, and you can imagine the submissions that we do get. So we do try to, we encourage companies to provide us with supplemental materials in a digital format.
Okay, great.
That answers that question.
Yeah, we received a few questions about diversity, and so folks would like to know if Great Place to Work uses demographic info as an input or criteria for making the list. So in other words, to what extent, to which a company employs a diverse employee base, does that count towards anything for making the list?
Absolutely. And when we look at diversity, we're looking at diversity within your workplace as well as the community in which you operate in. So it does take us, it is a factor that we consider as part of our process. And it's really, if you look at the practice areas that we're looking at, we're talking about the fairness. So we are looking at how fair and equitable policies and practices are within the organization. But also when we talk about when we talk about some of our other practice areas, we do want to make sure that people of all genders and all racial demographics are included within the workplace, so that there's not a sense of exclusion within the organization. So while it is a factor that we consider, definitely, it's important for us to also look at the location that you're in and the demographic makeup of that organization, of that location that you're in.
Okay, thanks, Erin. We have a number of questions about the survey and how that whole thing works. So one of them is, what if I do not meet the required response rate to the survey?
That's a great question. And really, depending on the time frame that you've participated and what our deadlines are, we're always willing to help companies increase their response rate. So we often will send additional surveys to you or have you pull in additional samples for us, or we can extend the survey windows so that you can keep it open longer than 2 weeks so that we can try to increase that response rate. It is really important for us to meet that required response rate so that we have a representative voice of your workplace culture. So we'll do what we can to make sure that you do meet the required response rate.
Okay, great. And then also, what about paper surveys? What if some employees need a paper survey? Is that something available, or is everything just online?
Absolutely. Everything, we do offer a paper survey. We offer 2 types of surveys. So we do have the online version of the survey, which is really designed for those employees that have access to an email address and a computer. So whether it's their own computer or a kiosk where they have access to complete their survey within their own time frame. So we encourage you to make that available for those employees that do have access to an email address and a computer. But oftentimes we know that there's employees that are in the field or are in a manufacturing facility that don't have access to email or a computer, and that's when we do make paper surveys available. It's very important for us to make sure that we get a representative voice from your entire organization, and those employees that don't have access to a computer are very important for us to hear from as well. So you would just need to tell us how many employees you have that would fall under that category, and we will ship you the necessary surveys and the business reply envelopes that you would then be responsible for distributing to those employees. But we handle the online survey portion of the survey. We deploy that as well as a couple of reminders that we send out throughout the process. So people that have employees that are in the field or in a manufacturing facility or something where they don't have access to an email box or a computer, we definitely want to make sure that those employees are included.
Okay, great. That's really helpful. Here's a different kind of a question, which is really around the risks of applying, because in terms of all this information that companies are providing as part of the culture audit and, the survey. So what if as an organization is a little bit worried about either results going public and reflecting poorly on the organization? That's sort of the main thing, but then also what about some details or confidential information inside the application?
Sure. So as I mentioned before, we are in the business of positive recognition. So if your company doesn't make the list, no one is ever going to know about it except for you. So if you decide that you want to publish a blog or something on why your company didn't make the list, that would be something that would come from you and never from us. We never talk about the companies that participate in our Best Companies to Work For list. And in terms of confidential data, we do ask that if there is something that you want to have remain confidential, that you just indicate so in your culture audit submission. And we'll do our best to make sure that is monitored and that data point does not get published. The other thing I'll add too is that as Fortune Magazine, they do we do our own fact checking, but then they do their own fact checking as well. And they are verifying with companies that are going to make the list. They verify all the specific data points that are going to be included either in print or on the online publication, so that companies have the opportunity to say, hey, I don't want that data point published. So it's twofold. We do what we can on our side here, but Fortune is also committed to maintaining the confidentiality of companies' data points. We know specifically a couple questions that are there's always concern around, and that's around the revenue questions that we ask, as well as the compensation questions that we ask. So there are check boxes that you can indicate that those questions are to remain confidential. And also, when you do register, you'll see, as part of the registration process, you'll see what we call our terms of participation, and this really outlines in detail how your data will be used and how it's used with our media partners. So you have to agree to those terms in order to move forward with the application process. So please review those terms and make sure that you're comfortable with that before you proceed.
Okay, great. I'm going to ask one last question over audio, but in the meantime, we're going to put a slide up so that you can see the contact information if you guys want to follow up with us and just send us an email. Also, we can stay online for another few minutes after the webinar if you want to try to get an instantaneous response. We are sending responses back to people live for the next few minutes inside GoToMeeting. So, Erin, could I ask you to put the slide back up with the contact information? You have it up? Okay, great. So, yes, definitely reach out to us if you want to send us an email. We will get back to you guys. But let me ask one more question of you, Erin, while we're here live, and that is about benchmarking. So can companies basically view the results against all of the participants in the survey, or do they review the results just against the best 100?
That's a great question. So this goes back to our belief about positive recognition and never sharing scores with companies that have not made the list. And with all of the benchmarks that we provide, we never would provide an individual company's data. So you would never see your competitor's data. The benchmarks that we include are all aggregated with at least 5 companies or more for each benchmark. So say you want to do an industry benchmark of information technology. We would have to have at least 5 companies that are part of the list in the information technology industry in order for us to produce a benchmark on that list or on that particular industry. So we would never reveal individual company scores, and we would never reveal, we are all about positive recognition of the best companies, so we never would reveal scores from companies, even in aggregate, from companies that were not list makers. So our focus is really on the list makers and not the companies that didn't make the list.
Okay, great. And I'll invite you to say that one more time because I know you're a big champion that we never share information about companies that didn't make the list. Do you want to state that one more time with all the passion that you...
It's so important to us and to me especially at Great Place to Work, but we will never share companies' data of companies that have never made the list. So just rest assured that if you don't make the list, again, nobody's going to know about it except you. We will not publicize that information anywhere without your consent, so it just never happens.
Okay, great. So thank you so much, Erin, and to everyone on this webinar. We've received hundreds of great questions. We want to make sure we answer all of them for you, especially if you have something very specific about your situation or your application process. So we will attempt to get back to each and every question. And in the meantime, we also invite you to email us at the email address that you see here on the slide, or call us directly at 415-844-2500, extension 390. And we look forward to working with you guys, and we wish you best during this process. Thanks, everybody. Oh, and one other thing, we mentioned that we will send the slides and the recording of this event, so you will get that as well. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Have a great day.